shadow government is working with them, but who is the shadow government working with? Are they working with the benevolent or malevolent ones, right? Are they working with the good or the bad ones?
Right.
I believe they're working with the not so good ones for more nefarious purposes, but I do believe that there are good and bad ETs in the universe and good and bad ETs working with planet Earth.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Just like humans, right? We've got good and bad.
All right, guys, we got a local here today, Elizabeth April. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks
Love
for
the
having
outfit.
me.
Yeah,
for
of course.
Sure.
Have you been speaking at a lot of events lately?
I've been doing a couple of select interviews, but for the most part, just really focused on my next book. So
Okay. What's
that's
that
the
book?
vibe.
Have you given a little sneak peek yet on that one? Or
Yeah, so I have just signed with a publisher, which is exciting. And the working title right now is Your Anxiety is Giving Me Anxiety.
Whoa.
So it's all about anxiety, but from a different perspective.
Okay. So you think it's transferable?
I think so, absolutely. And I think if anyone has suffered from anxiety and someone's in the room having an anxiety attack, you're going to feel it. And it's an empathic thing. And that's why we need to get outside of the medication and the MD. And that's why I'm coming from it from a very different perspective.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My best friend had a panic attack, and I was in the same car as that person, and I felt it.
This is what I'm saying, right?
It was crazy. Like my heart dropped.
Yep.
That's how much I felt it.
Exactly.
Like I was literally driving, and I was like, I almost had to stop the car. I could feel it that much.
Exactly. So and right now I think everyone's feeling it. I mean, we just had the election, so the anxiety is ripe, the polarity is ripe. So we need to be talking about this from a position where, we can empower ourselves to overcome anxiety.
Yeah.
Without medication, without going down that path.
Absolutely. I've been down that path too. That was a dark path.
Yep.
Relying on medication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, long term it just doesn't seem
No,
like
it's not a solution.
not at all. But they're handing it out like it's candy.
Yep, exactly.
Were you on that path as well at one point?
Yeah, I definitely dabbled, but mostly just really focusing on more of the natural path. And every place I turned, no one seemed to really have the answers or even really know what anxiety was. So I'm like, okay, well, let's dive into this. Like, let's figure this out. So even though mental health isn't really my normal field, it is a part of spirituality. And I think people who have the extrasensory abilities, they feel it more, right? People who are empaths feel more anxiety because it's not just our stuff we're feeling. It's the world's, and the world is in a bit of chaos right now.
Yeah, so you must have been feeling all this turmoil from the election.
Oh, it's been intense.
No wonder you've been laying low writing the book.
Exactly, yeah.
So when you go out in public, are you just feeling people's emotions as you walk past them?
So because I have been extrasensory from a young age, I've learned how to shut that down and then open up when it's appropriate. So I have incredible boundaries, which is so needed, and then I try and teach others how to have those boundaries as well.
Because I think there's people walking around that don't even know they have that ability.
Absolutely. I think most people don't know that they have those abilities.
Yeah, and then they think their anxiety is from them, but it could be from someone else.
Yep. And people who are extra sensitive have a lot of mental health stuff, anxiety, depression, even thoughts of what am I doing here? Because they feel like they don't have a purpose.
For sure. Were you, was it a family thing? Like the extrasensory stuff, do you think it was inherited? How do you think that works?
Yeah, that's interesting. I always say that I'm not like a fifth generational psychic, like I definitely think that my grandma and even my dad, they've got some sort of connections, but nothing like what I had as a kid. So I also didn't really have anyone to turn to. Like I've never had a mentor or a teacher. I'm glad that it was that way so that I could have my own discovery. But when I was raised under the Catholic framework. So for me, I was always communicating or talking to God, right? Like that was sort of my perception of it. And for a long time as a kid, I wanted to be a nun. I wanted to commit myself to being a conduit for God's messages and to help the world that way. And I think now getting outside of that framework, I'm still someone who's receiving messages and relaying them, but just more so in a universal sense and, not as culty, right? As religion, right?
Oh, so you were part of a culty side of it?
No, but I just think Catholicism, even like certain sections of Christianity can be so rule intensive, so fear mongering.
For sure.
And you even just go to a church and you're sitting and you're kneeling and you're saying amen together and it really feels like you're a part of this culty organization.
Yeah, and it's hard to get outside perspective when you're in that world.
Exactly, because I think a lot of people within religions are very sensitive and are very naturally in tune and spiritual, and they're looking for something beyond the walls of this reality, but yet religions only give you so much, right? And then they withhold a lot as well. So they keep people in a certain position when they feel like that's their only answer.
Yeah, because if you bring up past lives in that setting, they're going to think you're crazy.
Yep, absolutely. Even things that have been scientifically proven, right? Like remote viewing, for example, you know, it's still like the demons work, right?
Right. So they scientifically prove that exists now?
Oh, remote viewing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's probably remote viewing and past life regression as far as like hypnosis is concerned. They're sort of more rooted in a provable framework, I guess. Yeah. So remote viewing has its roots in like military, right? And so they used to train their military staff to get out of their body and go remote view the Soviets to gain access to secret, information. And so remote viewing is cool in particular because there's something called scientific remote viewing, which means that you could do a blind test or a double blind test, which means that you get coordinates and those coordinates link you to a location. And so that can be proven, right? Like you can be alone in a room, get these coordinates that mean nothing at all, and then link that to a location and then prove that, yes, you are indeed getting out of your body, going to a location and seeing what's there at that location.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's why I really do, like I call myself a remote viewer because the premise of everything that I explore and everything that I know comes down to me being able to go into a deep state of trance, get out of my body, and just get curious about the universe, ask questions.
Fascinating. And when you're in that state, are you going to specific locations? Do you have a plan beforehand?
Absolutely, yeah. So I personally usually have an intention of what I want to get out of, say, a remote viewing session. So when I first started doing it, when I was like 18, 19 years old, totally untrained, never had a mentor or a teacher. One thing that I was really interested in was underground military bases. I mean, what are the governments doing? And so I ended up in a lot of really tricky situations because I really didn't have any sort of limitations except for my curiosity.
Wow. So they kind of sensed you were there and...
So I didn't know this, but they also have their own military remote viewers, especially if it's a very top secret facility.
Yeah.
A lot of military bases don't have their own remote viewers, but a lot of the top secret ones do. So their remote viewers were able to see me remote viewing.
Whoa.
And I guess that's why they're around, is to catch people like me. So yeah, that was a little scary. And I remember telling my dad when I was 18 and I said, hey, I want to let you know that like I've been getting out of my body and like I can go over to the next room or I can go over to my neighbor's house or I could go wherever I want to go, right, in the world. And my dad said, never tell anyone you can do this because the military will, like, they'll take you and like they'll experiment on you or they'll like keep you for like as a soldier. And so he like instilled so much fear in me. So I was super like low key, top secret for a long time about what I could do. And I think these days there's enough people exploring these abilities that I don't feel as threatened.
Wow.
In that sense, yeah.
That's good, right? That's the power of alternative media, I think.
Exactly.
Because before, definitely a lot of shame with anything spiritual, not even just remote viewing, just in general.
Yep.
But now you can openly talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not the only one. And even some of my more fringy beliefs on like aliens and like other dimensions and what's really going on.
Yeah.
It's not as woo-woo. It's not as weird. And most of the conspiracies that have been out there have now started to be proven. So
which is crazy.
They're not really conspiracies. It's just the truth, right? So we're not looked at as fringy, as crazy. We're actually looked at as, part of the truth and then potentially part of the solution.
Absolutely. Is it true they moved Area 51 somewhere else?
There's a couple of bases that they have shifted around just because of the focus on Area 51.
Yeah.
But there's still some stuff going down in Area 51.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any aliens, extraterrestrial stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have different like layers or levels, and then every level is dedicated to a different intention, let's say. And then different levels have different extraterrestrial beings. Like they're not imprisoned there. They're just walking around.
Oh, really?
Like they're working with the governments,
Oh.
which is really fascinating. Yeah. So it's funny, but since moving to Las Vegas, I have not gone over there because I do have a bit of a fear if I go over to Area 51 again and they sort of trace me back to my body that's 2 hours away or whatever, I just feel like that's potentially a little bit of a safety risk.
Absolutely.
So
that makes sense.
When I lived on the other side of the country, I would remote view them all time.
Yeah.
So.
Canada, right?
Mm-hmm. Canada, yeah.
Nice. Were there bases over there too?
You know what? It's funny. I'm sure there are, but I've never really been interested in the Canadian secret bases. But I do believe that every government's got their own secrets, right?
So you were just exploring the U.S. ones?
Yeah, specifically, yeah.
But you could go anywhere, right?
I can go anywhere,
Doesn't have to be U.S.?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And does it take a long time, say if it's in like Asia or Russia, travel there?
Just takes a couple seconds.
Whoa,
yeah.
it's
It's
that
pretty
fast.
wild, yeah. So in the past, it used to take me anywhere from like 40 to 60 minutes to get into that trance state and then to receive the information, come back into my body and relay it. But now it takes me no time at all. And I do
Holy
believe
crap.
that everyone can do this. This isn't like some sort of gift that I have. It's just something that you practice.
That's so cool. And do you have full recall of the encounters?
Yeah, full recall. So it depends on the information, but sometimes it'll take a lot of back and forth for me to relay everything. But what I like to say is 5 minutes of gaining access to the information could potentially be 5 hours of relaying the information.
Wow.
I call it like a zip file that you receive, So it's a lot all in one, and then it takes language and interpretation and translation to relay it all. Yeah.
This is so interesting to me because the government paints these aliens in a bad light for the most part, like a negative manner. They want us to be fearful of them, but you're saying they're working with them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, the shadow government is working with them, but who is the shadow government working with? Are they working with the benevolent or malevolent ones, right? Are they working with the good or the bad ones?
Right.
I believe they're working with the not so good ones for more nefarious purposes, but I do believe that there are good and bad ETs in the universe and good and bad ETs working with planet Earth.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Just like humans, right? We've got good and bad.
You need that balance, right?
We do.
Can't be lopsided.
Exactly.
Have you remote viewed Antarctica yet?
Oh, I have. Yeah. That was
That's
one of the
awesome.
first places I went.
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome.
And that's where another remote viewer kicked me out.
Oh.
Like he found me and I was like,
Yeah, they don't mess around there.
oh, they do not mess around there.
So you went in the crack though?
Oh, I went like down into the base. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, like what's interesting is when I was there, it was probably the only time it was weird because typically I'll see things, right? When I remote view, like I can see the room and describe it. But when I was in the Antarctic base and I was going through the hallways, I could feel, so it was like these like rounded cement hallways, like so deep underground, all cement. And I could feel like the cool dampness of the air, which I've never experienced, like actually having a visceral experience. But man, what they're doing in that base, I think that they've sort of calmed it down because that was about 10 years ago that I went over there and got kicked out. But what they're doing over there, or what they were doing over there, was pretty horrific.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
it was really
man.
disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that's where the globalists are. Controlling the show,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. And so essentially what I saw was people basically strapped down to beds in rooms, and what it looked like, they were really all deformed, and it looked like they were doing experimentation to make some sort of like super soldier.
Whoa.
Like that was basically the vibe, but the experimentation was more so genetic experimentation, not necessarily with all on-planet genetics, if that makes sense. So they were using like other forms of extraterrestrial genetics to try and create sort of this human hybrid super soldier. And once again, it was just a lot of just low energy, torturous sort of vibes. And
Dang.
it
That's
was
scary.
disturbing, yeah.
Holy crap. Well, they say humans were genetically made, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like made by higher intelligence, whereas humans trying to replicate something like that, we really don't know what we're doing. And that's probably the scariest part.
Wow. That is crazy. So when the guy or whatever kicked you out, did you feel it coming or was it just sudden?
It was really sudden. So I was sort of just, floating down this hallway, right, in my astral body. And then there was this really big, and the way that I see other remote viewers is it would be like an outline of a human body, but transparent, like kind of like a ghostly shape almost. Anyway, so he was really big and like tall and also wide, and he was floating down the hallway towards me. And I was confused because I've never seen another remote viewer. Like I've never been seen before at that point. And so he looks at me and he goes like this and he goes, poof, and he kicks, like pushes me energetically way outside of the base. And all of a sudden, like, I'm now outside. And I was just confused. And so what I did was I cloaked myself, which essentially is putting like an invisibility cloak around your astral body. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, depends on their consciousness level. And I went back into the base, and this guy's all frazzled, right? Like this remote viewer. I didn't know who it was or what just happened, so I was curious. So I stepped in behind him, and with any remote viewer, you have a grounding cord, and that grounding cord leads the astral body back to the physical body. So what I did was I followed this guy's grounding cord down the hall, so behind him, and then I went into this tiny room, like we're talking very small room, and there was two men in military fatigues, and they were sitting at these desks, and the desks look like sort of like study desks because they had like a barrier and then like sort of a wall in between them, which didn't matter because these men were sitting in chairs. One was very small and sort of, like sort of nerdy. And then the other was like this big hulking guy. And both of them in these military fatigues were like this. They were slumped over. And so in that moment, I realized, oh, these are their remote viewers. So they're sitting in the base physically, and then they're patrolling the base astrally. And that was my first experience learning that, okay, I got to be careful because I can't just go anywhere and do whatever I want.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They need to make a movie about that or something.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So I wonder if like presidential candidates are aware of this.
So when I remote view, because I have remote viewed politicians and celebrities just for my own curiosity, and a lot of them have, let's call them astral or even entity protectors around them. So it prevents me from reading their energy, essentially. Yeah. So a lot of the time I'll be blocked, or I can't get as close as I'd like to, or I can't receive as much information as I'd want to.
That's interesting.
Because of their sort of energetic protections.
So the elites are definitely aware of this.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right. It's just like they don't talk about it or admit it.
No, definitely not. There's a lot of things they don't admit.
Oh, yeah? So you couldn't get a read on Trump?
I can't. I could.
Oh, you could? Only
to a certain extent, right? And so the information that I received, and I channeled him maybe about a year ago now, and the information that I received was his soul contracts. And if you really take a step back from all of the chaos and confusion and misinformation and, flashing lights and all the things, and you ask the question, like, what soul would sign up for that body? What soul would sign up for that position, right? Like, what soul's going to volunteer? Yeah, I'll be Donald Trump in this life, right? If you really take a step back. So I wasn't able to get everything, but what I was able to definitively get about him is that his soul contract, so his basically mission for this lifetime is the bringer of chaos. Okay, so that's his mission. That is what he is here to do, is to bring and create and cause chaos.
Really?
And if you take a look at the world right now, and if you take a look at this sort of shifting energy of where we have been and where we're going, that's what we need right now. We don't need someone saying, oh, don't worry about the government. We've got it all figured out. You just go on, live your life. Like we'll figure it out for you. We need someone that causes and creates so much confusion, so much chaos that it leads people to one thing, which is questioning. We need people to be questioning everything right now. And we also need the systems that have been in place that do not serve the collective. We need those to collapse. And so I do think that Trump is going to be the one to collapse the old system. Do I think that he's a savior? Do I think that he's some sort of prophet? No, absolutely. Absolutely not. But do I think that he is making the change that we need, creating that change? Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Wow. There seems something very spiritual with his assassination attempt, survivals. I mean, the odds of surviving that just seem so low.
Absolutely. I mean, he's here for a reason, right? And I think that for many years I've seen this sort of timeline, right? 2020 to 2024, and then we're now emerging into this next timeline, which is 2024 to 2028. And over this next 4 years, we've got a choice to make. Do we want to be in service to self, or do we want to be in service to others, right? Do we want to be individualized, or do we want to move forward with unity? And in order to move forward with unity, we need to experience as much polarity as possible. So although it seems that we're so divided right now, and it seems like especially this country is in chaos, it's needed. And unfortunately, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Wow.
We all need to stop, saying, oh, well, I identify as this and you identify as this and you're terrible, and say, oh my goodness, hi, I'm a human. What's going on? What do we need together as humans? No matter the country, the race, the culture, the language, the age, we need to step up and recognize each other as one thing. And then and only then can we actually fully move into full cosmic disclosure. I mean, how can we accept interdimensional beings who are very different than us and yet very similar to us if we can't even accept our own species?
Right. And that's how the ancients were, right? The ancient civilizations.
Yep.
And they seem to be in touch with other species as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was full cosmic disclosure back then, and everyone seemed to be pretty okay with it.
Right. And that brings me to Galactic Confederation, right?
Yep.
So is that a real thing where there's other species of aliens all together?
Yeah, there is. So I was stepping into the remote viewing and astral projection and mediumship and clairvoyancy and all of these really cool things. Now, at that time, if you asked me, like, do aliens exist? I would say, yeah. I mean, there's got to be something else out there in the universe, but why would they be here? Why would they bother with us? Like, why would they use their resources? I mean, we're barely ahead, right? We haven't figured it out. And then shortly after that, I ended up getting abducted, right?
Whoa.
Physically abducted by interdimensionals, which totally blew the lid off of my reality and led me into that questioning. Okay, great. They are here. They are interacting with us. So who are they? What do they want? And how can they either benefit us or detriment us? And so that was, once again, when I was 18, 19. I'm 32 now, so it's been over a decade of unpacking that and exploring those questions and figuring out what they're doing here.
Dang. Was it like it was in the movies where you got beamed up?
Yeah. I mean, it was a very conscious experience, and it wasn't a very pleasant one. So the beings who took me were not great. They weren't all full of love and light. Yeah. But I know that I needed to have that sort of negative experience with extraterrestrials to once again realize that there are good and bad. And it was a couple of months after that negative abduction experience where I was greeted by a Pleiadian being. And he said that there's this organization called the Galactic Federation of Light, and that I'm a part of it, and that they have information, not just for me, but for humanity.
Wow.
And so that was back in 2011, okay, that all happened. And then it wasn't until 2016 where I started my YouTube channel and started talking about things that I was downloading. But I never thought I would ever tell people that I was communicating with this organization of extraterrestrials. I thought that is so fringy, that is so crazy, no one's going to take me seriously, and all I want to do is help people, but not disturb them, And then it was 2020 where the Galactic Federation said, okay, this is time. You need to tell people. And that's when I found all of the people. That's when all the people found my content.
Wow.
Yeah. I went from like 2,000 subscribers to 200,000 subscribers in like a year because the Galactic Federation said, you need to tell people that you're communicating with us.
Crazy.
And it wasn't too long after that we had a couple of real disclosures from the governments talking about the Galactic Federation, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, so there's I believe an ex-military, defense military guy from Israel who said, hey, there's an organization of extraterrestrials. They're here to help us. They're called the Galactic Federation. That was about a year after I came out and said, this is who I'm communicating with. We have to realize that there's an organization of not so good beings here who are sort of vying against us. And then there's an organizations of really good beings who are here to help us get to the next level.
Wow. So there's conflict within the alien races too.
Absolutely. Big time. Both on planet and off planet.
That's interesting. Because I thought when you consciously evolve, there's no conflict anymore.
Trust me. When I learned about the Galactic Federation, I was really upset. I was really disappointed because at the time I was in university studying politics and specifically global politics. So I was so done with the political system on planet Earth, understanding how corrupt it was, only to meet this, evolved and loving organization of beings, but yet they're mentioning there's galactic wars and there's a hierarchy and they have to keep the bad ones in line. And I'm like, no, do not tell me that I'm going to die and reincarnate as an ET and it's all the same over there, you know? So I was like, it took me a couple of years to like get over my disappointment with it doesn't really get much better.
Yeah, that's upsetting because I thought the conflict was like a lower vibration.
Right. This is what I thought too, right? It's like, you guys can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just all live in peace? It's like, okay, cool. Dark exists, but like you stay over there, and like we can all just be in harmony. But no, there are so many different also levels of politics that happen up there in other dimensions. I will say that as you get into the much higher dimensions, like 10th, 11th, 12th dimension, more so the etheric dimensions, it does get a lot better. And there is way more unity and way less polarity and way less conflict and all of that. So it does get better, but it takes a while.
We got some dimensions to go through first.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah.
I wonder what aliens fight about. Because it's probably different than what humans fight about, right?
No, it's all the same.
Oh, it's the same?
Oh, yeah. Territory, resources.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. But what do they need as an alien?
Yeah, it's just all the same things, but at a next level. Like, think about our technology. So say, for example, we have all these quantum computers now. We have all these, AI systems. Great. But in order to have these supercomputers, what do we need? We need huge, massive inputs of electricity, right? So where do we find that? Are we farming for it, or do we have solar farms? Like what? So it's the same thing over there. It's like they have technology, they need resources, they're expanding their colonies, and it's all of that. Now, I will say that all of the species or civilizations that are a part of, say, a federation or the Galactic Federation, they're like, let's play nice, right? Like globalization. I'll share with you, you share with me, we'll exchange resources, we're all copacetic. The beings who are on sort of more of the service to self end of things, they're like, no, I'm just going to take what I want.
Got it.
Right? And then they override the laws of the universe. And then that's where the Galactic Federation steps in and says, you're overriding these laws. And so we're going to basically, there's going to be consequences. And we're the ones who need to assign those consequences.
Reminds me of Russia and NATO. So it is very similar to
It's
people.
Unfortunately similar, yes.
Wow. That is crazy. So the ones that abducted you were not part of the Federation?
No, they definitely were not. Yeah.
Wow. So they targeted you.
Yeah, they were actually a part of the government organizations.
Oh,
yeah.
Was that after you remote viewed somewhere and then?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was like, it just happened to be that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, essentially. Okay. And then where I was located was about 5 miles away from a military base, so they were just around. And the way that it was described to me was, they were wondering why, as a human, I had such a high frequency. So they pretty much took me for curiosity, and then they chipped me
Whoa.
to track me. Yeah, to see what I was doing that was so different from the other humans.
Dang, so there's a chip in you right now?
So the chip was removed,
Okay.
luckily, yeah. So crazy story, but about a month after I was abducted, so they essentially put something in my ear, and when I was unparalyzed again, because I couldn't move in the abduction, but I could open my eyes, so I was aware, I could see everything, I just couldn't talk.
It's like sleep
or move.
paralysis.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so they put something in my ear, and when I woke up, there was blood coming out of my ear, which was a sort of a physical validation of that happening. About a month later, I felt them watching me. Like I felt them just in my everyday. It was really bizarre. And a month later, I ended up meeting a medical medium. I was so skeptical. I'm like, okay, sure. Like you can see cancer in body. Like, sure. And so I didn't tell her anything. I'm like, look, something's going on. Can you just scan my body or do your thing?
Yeah.
And she did. And she's like, oh, you got abducted. You have a chip in your right ear. I'm like, what?
Whoa.
And she's like, yeah, they're tracking you because they were curious about who you were and why your frequency was so different than other humans. She's like, they also branded your aura, which is weird. And I didn't know that they could do that. And so she's like, I'm going to go ahead and dislodge this chip. And she said, it's got its own consciousness or intelligence to it, but it's made up of organic material. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, so you're going to pull it out? Like, what are you doing? And she's like, no, I'm just going to remove the energetic connection. And she's like, it'll most likely just drain from your ear. So I'm expecting this thing to pop out or whatever. And I honestly didn't really believe her, even though she picked up on what happened. And for probably 6 months after that session, my right ear was draining this really gross liquid.
Dang.
Yeah. So I was expecting this thing to pop out, but it almost like melted in my ear. And I've actually had doctors check my ear out, and they're like, wow, you have a lot of, what do they call it, scar tissue in your right ear, which is basically signs of trauma. Which my left ear doesn't have, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, it's definitely very fascinating.
That is super fascinating.
Pretty much the only time I've experienced a chip like that, an implant.
Yeah, there's people that want to chip up humans, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Which is scary.
Yeah,
I'm scared of the Neuralink.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll get that one.
Yeah, no.
I feel like
I'll
they
skip
can,
that one too. Yeah.
They could hack into that or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been exploring energy healing too.
Cool.
I got some Reiki done last week.
And?
I was skeptical, but it worked.
Wow.
My body hurt after, and he didn't lay a single hand on me.
Yeah.
But I had pain in my arm and my shoulder and my feet. I was like, there's something to this.
Yep, there is. I'm a huge believer in quantum mechanics, right, and quantum physics, and I believe that everything that I can do and everything I experience can be proven by quantum mechanics. And as a clairvoyant, what I can do is I can tap into the quantum layers of this reality. So, there's like Schrodinger's cat and the double slit experiment and wave particle duality. Now, these are just quote unquote theories, but I've been able to tap in and to see that and to prove that. So
Whoa.
I think that at a certain point, science is going to catch up with consciousness, and it's going to end up being all the same thing at the end of the day. So, and I think that we're going to see that very clearly in our lifetime as well, is
Really?
that quantum mechanics is going to prove consciousness and spirituality. And in a lot of ways, it already has. People just aren't talking about it because the second you say quantum mechanics, they're like, yep, I'm checked out.
It's too advanced.
And I get that. Yeah, I get that for sure. So I try and explain those concepts in a super relatable way so that people can identify with it and understand that this is not woo-woo, this is not spiritual, this is scientific.
That'd be great to see, because right now there is that divide with science and spirituality, right?
Yep. And quantum mechanics is the unification of that.
So do you get these visions or feelings? How does that clairvoyance work?
Yeah, so clairvoyance in particular is like sight, right? So I can close my physical eyes, open up my third eye, and then tap into all of the dimensional layers, right? So just like I remote view this planet and can see things in military bases, I can also remote view off planet.
Whoa.
And go to different spaceships or different planets, or just tap into the sort of quantum world of this reality, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. What other planets caught your interest?
So mostly I go visit different motherships. So that's sort of my vibe. I don't usually go to a lot of planets. I have been to planets. I also do like past life regression or Akashic records. And for me, that's also remote viewing, right? Past life regression is you're just remote viewing a different time and space. And so I've remote viewed a lot of lifetimes off planet, not just my own lifetimes off planet, but other people's lifetimes off planet, which is really interesting. But a lot of planets are very similar to our own. And even the movie Avatar,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of planets that aren't as developed look like that. You know, they are very sort of earthy and grounded, and they've got their own elements and things like that.
Interesting. Yeah. When I see these movies, I'm like, someone must have remote viewed to get those ideas or something.
Someone's tuning into something for
yeah,
sure.
like Star Trek and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how do you just come up with that?
Yeah, exactly.
Even Harry Potter's like crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is.
that's so cool though. So motherships, that's just a giant spaceship. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's one mothership in particular that I visit, which is the Galactic Federation mothership, and that hangs out in our solar system.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I don't have to go too far to get there. And then I interact with a couple of different councils that are on that mothership to gain access to information for planet Earth.
Nice.
So a lot of my remote viewing is my own sort of questions and curiosity. And then when I ask for guidance, I go over to the Galactic Federation and ask them in particular for guidance if I am not able to get the information myself.
So it's in our solar system. Would that come up on like an advanced telescope or something?
So it's funny, there has been a couple of astrophysicists and people who do observe the sky. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, they're like, wow, there's this object traveling around that looks like a giant spaceship, but like we're going to call it an asteroid. And, you know, a lot of this stuff has been talked about, but it has also been swept under the rug.
Yeah.
But they also have cloaking devices.
Okay.
So a lot of the time they cloak and they can't be seen.
That's how I feel like UFOs operate too.
Yeah, a lot of them just cloak themselves.
Yeah, because 1 minute they're there and then they're gone
And then they're,
instantly.
Yep.
That's so fascinating. I went UFO hunting with, do you know Chris and Ryan Bledsoe? They had like some alien abduction stories.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And they were just speaking out loud and they were like appearing in the sky.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You did that in Vegas?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we went out here. There's a pitch black road and I saw 2 meteor showers.
Nice.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
I wonder how many of them are just chilling up there, just
Yeah.
invisible, cloaked or whatever.
There's quite a few, and I think that it's only going to increase.
Yeah. Seems like there's more and more sightings these days, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You think they want to integrate with us?
I think so, yeah. I think once again, we have to get to a place where we can recognize each other and love each other
Right.
to really let them in. But something that I have received as a message from the Galactic Federation is that no matter what, disclosure is going to happen because our trajectory is becoming a galactic civilization. That's what it's called, right? At that point where we're a galactic civilization, we get to exchange information, resources, and technology with higher dimensional beings. So talk about taking us to the next level, which is a big part of the reason why technology is exploding right now to get us to that sort of galactic civilization status. So what I've heard just recently in the past year is that the Galactic Federation spoke with, say, the shadow government or the collective governments on planet Earth to say, no matter what this is happening, no matter what, we're coming here and you're getting to this place of being this galactic civilization. And so you either tell your people about this or it's just going to happen. So now what we're seeing, especially with a lot of the hearings, right, and different groups and organizations that have been formed, and the government's coming out and saying, yeah, UAPs are real, kind of, right? But they're trying to get ahead of the narrative. They're trying to control the cosmic narrative so that when that eventually does happen, they're still in control of how it's perceived.
Interesting. Wow, game within a game.
Yep.
Yeah, there's levels to this stuff, right?
There is.
People just see the Democrat versus Republican, but there's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shadow government. What do you think their intentions are?
To control, right? Like it's not even about money because money they created it. Yeah, exactly. So money is just a mechanism of control. It's just control and power. And I mean, like I'm pretty honest about what I believe just because that is what I've remote viewed, which is the fact that the shadow governments, or I like to call them the powers that were rather than the powers that be, they are being controlled by reptilians, right? Like I do believe that they are off-world beings who are shape-shifting as human beings and controlling us that way. And so, one thing that's important to note is that from a very young age, I was told not to do any external research. So I don't know anyone who's in this field unless I've done a conference with them, because I don't watch any external information, right?
Wow.
So I don't watch UFO documentaries, TV shows. I don't read any sort of spiritual consciousness books. I have no idea who else is in this field and what they're saying. And the reason why that's so important for me is because when I remote view, I'm going in there with a clean slate, right? I've already got my own language and limitations to battle. I'm not going to go ahead and have preconceived notions about what other people are saying, right? So all I know is what I've received directly, right? And so that's why it's tough, because we do have a lot of people talking about certain things that are the truth, but then it comes with a lot of hate and a lot of separation, a lot of negativity. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh, EA, like you're part of the QAnon movement," and I'm like, I don't even know what that movement is, right? Because what I believe is apparently what they believe, but then it comes with a lot of hate and separation, and so. It's tough, right? It's tough to speak about these things and say, I don't read books. I have not gained this from anywhere except from a direct remote view.
Wow.
And yet there are other people talking about it, which is a good validation that we're all gaining access to the same things, except there are all these different layers of perception that are skewing it into different directions and confusing the hell out of people.
Right, because they probably have their plants in the industry too that are spreading misinformation.
Bingo. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a tough field to navigate. And what I tell people is, I'm not the bringer of truth. Like I have one perspective. I'm gaining access to a very small amount of information. If it resonates with you, then it's for you. And if not, that's okay too. But we all need to use our own discernment. And now, more than ever before, 2024, right? I mean, this is the age of AI. This is the age of illusion. This is the age of projection. I mean, anyone can create a fake EA avatar and spread disinformation. So we now need to, it's not about what is real or what is not real. It's about how you feel about things, right? We got to get away from the logical mind, because there's no logically deducing AI from reality. It's time that we tap into that internal compass and we really understand what discernment is.
Right.
So AI is forcing us into clear discernment because it's forcing us to understand that this reality is an illusion. Not just AI is an illusion, but this is also an illusion. How deep does the illusion go? And how deep does our discernment need to go in order to understand what the truth is?
Right. Yeah, AI's gotten so advanced. I was listening to an AI Joe Rogan episode yesterday
of
him interviewing Steve Jobs, and it sounded exactly like both of them.
Yep.
Like you wouldn't have been able to tell if they didn't announce it at the beginning it was AI. I would have no idea.
Wow.
It's that good now.
Yep.
So it's scary times. And even cloning is seeming like a possibility now, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
With these reptilians.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that they've had cloning technology for quite some time.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Do you remember that sheep that was cloned?
Sheep? No.
Okay, so this was like, I swear, I mean, I'm sure other people know about it, but I think it was back in like the late 90s or early 2000s where, I don't know what they called it, like Betty the sheep or whatever. They cloned a sheep, and then they had this identical sheep, and it was the first cloning experiment, but that was back then. And you know that they release information like 40 years after it's already been discovered. So where are we at now if that happened 24 years ago, right?
For real. I mean, my friend cloned his dog, so it's possible.
Yeah. So the average everyday person can pay probably a decent amount of
50K.
money. Yep. There you go. To clone their pets. So, I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
Like, what have they been doing behind the scenes? We got to question that.
I think some celebrities have been cloned personally.
Absolutely, yeah.
Scary times.
Actually, one of the things that I stumbled upon over a decade ago was an underground military base that was a cloning facility.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. Like, we're talking stereotypical sci-fi vibes, like the like the tubes, like the giant test tubes with the people in it. And I just saw the same celebrity 3 times in 3 different test tubes. Yeah.
They were doing it to people, and this was 10 years ago?
2 people, 10 years ago.
Holy
I literally
crap.
was so confused. I'm like, what is going on here? It actually felt like I was on board like a spaceship. It was so sci-fi. It was so futuristic. But the fact that I was seeing the same person over again, I'm like, holy they're cloning people. Yeah. And so what I've been able to uncover about cloning, and we won't go into it too much, is I've got many videos about it, but one of the first original public clones was Michael Jackson.
What?
Yes. So if you take a look at Michael Jackson, right? Oh, he had plastic surgery. This is why they're making plastic surgery really popular, quote unquote, because they can basically deduce, oh, the celebrity had plastic surgery. It's not a clone, it's plastic surgery. That's why they look different, right? So Michael Jackson was their first sort of test run for cloning. And specifically the reason why they replaced him with a clone was because he was saying too much.
He was, right?
He was against the system. He was talking, out of bounds, quote unquote, because they couldn't control him anymore. And he wanted to wake people up. So they killed him off. They replaced him with a clone. And that's why his skin got whiter. That's why his face got more gaunt. So what happened was they had to replace him many times with different clones because their cloning technology wasn't as good as it is now. So the clone basically, it's like the cells of a clone have like a very short half-life. Instead of the clone body living to 100 years like we would, it lives to maybe 5 years. I mean, now the technology is much better. It could maybe live 10 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars going into cloning, only for it to last a couple of years and then for it needing to be replaced. And this is why we see a lot of people glitching out as well, live on TV, because their clone is malfunctioning because they're at that end of the clone life.
I saw that with Katy Perry, right? When she was performing.
Yeah, exactly.
Biden even.
And Biden especially. So yeah, so that's really fascinating. Unfortunately, they took Michael Jackson, who was such a beautiful soul and such beautiful music, and they really corrupted his image, specifically because of the vibration he was giving. And by the end, they wanted to discredit everything he had done because it wasn't a high vibration. So that's where all of the rumors and everything came out with him.
Seems like they're doing that with Bieber now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Scary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the whole Diddy situation, right? Like, we're seeing that Hollywood is collapsing, and what's really exciting about it, it's horrific. For me, I've known about this stuff for a long time just because I've remote viewed it. Oh, I've been talking about trafficking for a very, very long time, and now we're actually seeing it come out. But what's exciting about this is the shadow government has the ability to suppress everything, right? If they were still in control, they would have suppressed all of the Diddy stuff right when it happened, right when it took place, which is what they've done year after year after year with all of these celebrities who have participated in this, right? So now all of a sudden, they can't control the narrative anymore, which says a lot about the kind of power they're losing right now.
Absolutely.
They're scared.
Yeah, they are. I think Elon Musk played a big role in that, buying up X, because now you get information from real people.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So, and I think that the age of the internet alone, right? So back in the day, they would sort of condition, control, MK Ultra these individuals and then say, we'll give you fame and fortune if you are basically under our control for the rest of your life. And they're like, yeah, sure, give me all the money and the fame and the whatever. They had no idea what they were really signing up for. But now you go over to a TikToker who has 14 million people and you're like, hey, I'll give you fame and money and all of the stuff if you sign over your, if you sign over your body for us, right? And TikToker's like, no way, dude. Like, I've got fame and fortune and all the things. I don't need to sign anything over to you. So what's interesting is the power of the average everyday influencer is overriding the power of the celebrity, which is also helping to completely dismantle their control techniques.
Absolutely. I mean, you saw with the election, how many big celebrities backed Kamala?
Yeah.
Like so many, like the biggest ones you could think of.
Yep.
And it didn't have any effect.
Yeah, exactly.
So times are changing. Because if they did that 10 years ago, it would have worked probably.
Yep, absolutely.
Easily. Were you able to get in touch with Michael Jackson's spirit? after he passed?
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah.
Did he know what happened or?
Oh, he was fully aware.
Wow.
So really just like so fascinating. So just this past year, I was remote viewing Kate Middleton because there's a lot of weird stuff going on with her, right? And like the royal family and her not being seen for many months.
What
right?
happened with that?
Okay, it's like a whole long, it's probably the craziest thing I've ever remote viewed, but essentially they killed her off. She wanted to leave the royal family. We already had Meghan and Harry leave. Like there's been so much scandal. They didn't want her to leave. Her husband was cheating on her. That's a whole internal thing. And so they ended up killing her off and then replacing her with a clone, okay? Anyway, and so it's going to sound so wild, especially if people are finding me for the first time, but whatever. Anyway, so I was able to take her soul and like reattach it to the clone body. So it is actually her again. It's
what?
Just so, I know. I didn't even know it was possible until I tried and it worked.
Wow.
I know. And like they basically, so in order for a clone body to work, they do need to put consciousness into it. So they basically have a machine that takes a consciousness and like inputs it into the body, but the consciousness isn't the original one, right? Because they want to be able to control this consciousness, and then they program that consciousness into the memories and the actions and the reactions of the original person.
Whoa, so they can implant all the memories?
Yep, exactly. So it's a process, right? Like it takes a while. Anyway, so the clone body and the consciousness, they weren't jiving, and then the clone body was dying because the consciousness wasn't feeding it that, like, I guess basically like a source energy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so once the real Kate Middleton got reconnected to the clone body, it started to like heal itself. Like the body started to recover. It was so wild. Anyway, so that was like a 6-video series I had to do.
Crap.
I did not release that publicly because I'm like, this is crazy from my standards. Right? Anyway, it's all on my website if people are interested in that. 'Cause you got to start from part 1 though, because it's wild. Anyway, so when I was talking to Kate Middleton, crazy enough, Princess Diana was there helping her as a spirit from the other side. And then when I talked to Princess Diana, I asked her, I said, hey, like, is this weird for you? Because Kate's a clone. Like, is this cloning thing weird for you, right? Because I'm like, this is bizarre, right? This whole cloning thing. And Princess Diana said, no, I was good friends with Michael Jackson, and he was the first one. So she knew that he was a clone. So of course, Michael Jackson knew that he was replaced by clones. Like he was on the other side checking out what they were doing and how they were really destroying his image.
Crazy.
While he was still alive. Wink, wink, right?
Right.
And then I guess Princess Diana was friends with him and knew everything that was going on. And of course, that's why, part of the reason why they killed her off, right? Because she knew
insane.
too much.
So
It just gets crazy.
Yeah. So she's back in her body now?
So Kate Middleton is finally back in her body, which is a clone body, and she's beyond excited to be reunited with her kids. Like she was so sad.
Hopefully she could get out, right? Escape.
So she's got to really play it safe for a while.
Yeah.
Now that she's in this body, like there's handlers and there's like other there's basically rules and regulations. Like she's got to abide by these rules. So basically this shadow government can't find out that it's the original Kate consciousness attached to this clone.
Okay.
So she's got to really like, if they're like, sit, she's got to sit. Okay, say this, she's got to say this, So she's really got to sort of play this game now, which is just such a mind trip if you think about it. I know, it is. It gets so crazy, but... And like I say, like, take it or leave it. This is just what I pick up on. Like, I think it's crazy. I never thought I would be publicly talking about this stuff. But unfortunately, it is what's happening on planet Earth.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Did you look into the Harry Styles stuff? Because I saw some TikToks about that. It seemed interesting.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't. Yeah. I mean, I'm just so, like, not against pop culture, but I'm so far removed from, like, celebrities and pop culture. So if I'm personally curious about something, I'll check into it. Just like the Kate Middleton stuff. I'm like, what's really going on? And that weird AI photo that she really like, come on, something's going on. So
the Kanye one was interesting too.
Oh yeah. I mean, big puppet there, right?
You think so?
And then all the Kardashians. Yeah. I mean, you can take a look at like these Illuminati rituals, right? So if one of their puppets or one of their celebrities or one of their they're not all clones, but if one of them sort of gets out of line, they'll go into rehab, right? And they usually come out with bleach blonde hair, which is an indication that they were just MK Ultra programmed,
Whoa.
right? Which is like a lot of drugs and a lot of, essentially, because I've been to these MK Ultra programming sites. And it's like it's kind of like old school torture techniques. Like they keep them awake, they keep them stimulated on drugs. And then there's like almost like TV programs that they have to watch, right? Like we're not talking like TV shows, we're talking like just programming. Like you are, like they torture them in a way that kicks their consciousness out of their body so that they can't rebel against the system. And then they essentially end up sharing a body with either an entity or like a reptilian that is in control of that body. And that's the whole like I sold my soul to the devil. You can never sell your soul, but you can sell your body. And then that's where sort of the celebrity original soul and then the reptilian soul share a body.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's quite wild. And in a lot of ways, like I feel, even though they signed up for it, because you have to use your free will to say, yes, I consent to this happening. And there's a lot of like rituals that go on around giving that consent. But you do have to feel sort of bad for the people who really didn't know what they were signing up for. And then they're trapped.
That's so scary.
Life. Yeah.
Taking a backseat in your own body.
Bingo.
I mean, that is, you can't control it at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Have you ever remote viewed the dark side of the moon?
Yes, I have.
What was that like?
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, the moon isn't a rock, okay?
Okay.
The first time I ever went over to the moon, at that point, I'd only ever remote viewed on planet, like on Earth stuff. I never even thought of going off planet to remote view. But then this Pleiadian being came into my room and said, there's a meeting in 2 days' time, and I want to take you to this meeting. And I said, okay, like I'm down. And I wasn't sure, are they going to physically abduct me and take me to the meeting? Am I going in my remote view body, like my astral body? So he told me, he's like, on December 21st, 2011, okay, that's when it was. It was going to be like, I think 4 a.m. my time in Eastern Standard Time. He said, you have to be awake. Maybe it was 2 a.m. He's like, you have to be awake. So woke up at 1, chugged a huge coffee. He once again came into the room. That's when I knew. He's like, follow me. And I followed him with my astral body. Okay, where are we going? And so we're like, literally, he's traveling off planet, off planet, off planet. I'm like, oh my God, we're leaving the planet? Like, this is even possible? So I'm going off planet. All of a sudden, we're going towards the moon. And I'm like, oh, cool. It's a meeting on the moon. No. It was a meeting inside the moon.
What?
So literally, he keeps going, and then he's going in the moon. And I'm like, can I do this? Like, can we just travel right through like a planet? Like, what's going on? And so we go in the moon, and it's hollow. There was this huge hollowed out space in the moon, and there was all these beings. Like, we're talking hundreds of thousands of interdimensional beings, like sitting in this sort of auditorium inside the moon.
What?
I know. And then there was all these astral bodies that were floating around, and I could see that their grounding cord all led them back to Earth. So I'm like, I'm one of the Earth beings that are here that are called to this meeting. And that was my first introduction to the Galactic Federation. And that's when they're like, okay, we are the Galactic Federation. We would like to talk about the ascension of planet Earth. And here are the things that you need to know. And so they laid out all these things. And this was in 2011. That was my first introduction to the Galactic Federation and the first introduction to the fact that the moon is hollow. Like, I call the moon like a satellite, right? Like, it was placed there specifically. And originally, the intention of this satellite was nefarious. It was there to sort of keep us conditioned and controlled and suppressed. And then, quite a while ago, like let's say a couple thousand years ago or whatever, the Galactic Federation took over the moon and then started utilizing it once again as sort of like an amplification device to help us ascend, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know when they took it over. It could have been a couple hundred years ago. It feels like it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah. So the moon landing, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so my thoughts on that. So I ended up meeting this guy. I spoke at a conference probably like maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. And it was a really quiet conference, and all the speakers had their own booth, right? And so there was this guy, I forget his name, super old guy, and he's like, yeah, I was like a NASA astronaut. So of course I sit down with him, like there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, tell me what the moon landing, like give me the scoop. And so what he said, and this resonated with me, but I didn't remote view it, so take it or leave it. But he basically said, so they did indeed set up a studio, okay, like a Hollywood studio to film this fake moon landing. And then we really did go to the moon, but when we went there, we were greeted by off-world visitors, and they said, you can't be here. Like, you're not allowed to be here. And so essentially NASA had to cut and edit all of those parts out. They just kept like little bits and pieces. And essentially, they overlaid this fake moon landing with the studio and the real moon landing, and they combined them together.
Wow.
And this is why they haven't been back to the moon, because it's active. Like
right, it's been 50 years.
Yeah, the dark side of the moon has been not taken over, but there's a lot of extraterrestrial bases there, and humans aren't allowed there.
Dang.
So yeah, and that resonated with me. I'm like, I do feel like it really happened, but there's something else going on for sure. And so he said it was really truly a little bit of both.
That makes a lot of sense because we've advanced so much technology-wise and we haven't been back.
Yep, exactly.
So that story adds up to me.
For sure.
What about Mars? You think there's anything there?
Yeah, I do. It is pretty desolate for the most part, but there are underground bases there.
Really?
And what's really interesting is I've seen human beings there in these underground bases. Yeah. And I haven't explored it too much. I probably should, but it feels more like nefarious. Like it feels more like secret space program, shadow government, top secret soldiers that are there and that have the ability. So it's more like rather than physically going there, it's more like teleportation devices that take them there, like portals,
Got it.
From planet Earth to there. Once again, I don't know why they're there, but there's definitely underground military bases, not just with humans, but with many ET beings as well.
I could see that because a lot of these ancient like pyramids have been taken over, right? So maybe they had access to the portals.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Weather modification. Do you believe in that?
For sure, yeah. So just recently I remote viewed the HARP. They've got multiple HARP devices. So I think it's HARRP or something. And so they do have these giant machines on planet Earth planted all over the planet, not just in America. And they use sort of the cloud seeding, right, with the chemtrails, along with these frequency devices that do create abnormal weather events. For a variety of reasons. And just recently we had Hurricane Milton. I do believe that right away I'm like, this is not natural. This doesn't feel like a natural occurrence. And what was really beautiful is there was people all over the world who decided we're going to try and minimize this hurricane. And so we all came together, not just me and my community, but many all over the world came together and focused, right, on minimizing Hurricane Milton. And it happened, right? Like it was supposed to wipe out Florida and it barely even rained, right? So I think that was a really big testament to if we do all come together and put our conscious minds together, we can shape and we can shift this world, right?
Yeah.
But we do have to agree on what it is that we're doing in order to have the results that we did with Milton.
Yeah, I heard people were lowering the wind speed through just conscious meditation,
just minimizing.
Right?
Yep, exactly.
That is crazy.
And it happened. And there has been like multiple experiments where they have tested meditators. Like one of the tests was they took a bunch of meditators and I believe they meditated on lowering the crime rates of a certain section of New York City. And the crime rates lowered by like 30% for a whole month just because these meditators focused on one goal.
So is that just them putting that vibration into the earth or frequency?
Exactly. And once again, it comes down to quantum mechanics, right? Whatever you focus on, you create. It's the double slit experiment, right? Our conscious observation changes and shifts the world around us. So great. We create the world. Like, what do we want to create next? So we just have to understand our power. We have the numbers. We have the consciousness. We just can't agree on things, you know? But that's what they want. That's what the shadow government wants too.
Yeah.
Right?
They put us against each other.
Exactly.
Whether it's race, gender, location.
Yep, exactly.
Damn. Well, Elizabeth, this has been one of my favorite episodes. For real.
Good.
I filmed 1,200 episodes. This has been awesome. I can't wait to follow your journey. Where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. Just ElizabethApril.com. And then if you just Google Elizabeth April, you'll find me on all the platforms. I recommend YouTube. Great place to binge watch. If you want censorship and ad-free and even a deeper dive, go to my website. That's where all my content is. It just feels protected that way. There's no censorship there. But I really do recommend start with my book. It's called You're Not Dying, You're Just Waking Up. And it is a complete journey and overhaul around spiritual ascension and what you're going to experience and all the symptoms involved. And it even leads you into quantum mechanics and soul mission and aliens and all the good stuff. So that is where you want to start if you really want to dive in.
I love it. We'll link the book below. Thanks for coming on.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, guys. Check out the links. See you next time.